So in this video, I will be explaining exactly how to determine what movements you should be doing and what movements you should not be doing when trying to rehab your sciatica pain at home. There are two very important words that I will be using a lot throughout this program. Those are centralization and peripheralization. Now, those two words are two sides of the same coin. They are just opposites of each other. Centralization means the pain or the symptoms are moving closer to the source, and peripheralization are pain and symptoms moving further away from that source. Now, when I am referencing the source here, I am talking about the source of the symptoms you are dealing with, and when we are speaking about this sciatica pain or numbness or tingling that you are dealing with, the source will always be referencing the nerve exiting the lower part of your spine. Now, for the sake of generalizing things throughout this program, almost everybody's symptoms will be exiting out the spine, out into the back of the hip, into the glute, and down the back of the leg to some degree, maybe even reaching into the back of the calf or even into the foot. So again, centralization is exactly what we want to happen with this program. We want these symptoms to centralize. That does indicate the nerve is healing and there is less pressure on the nerve. So centralization is good and peripheralization is not good. We do not want these symptoms to peripheralize more. Again, peripheralization, the exact opposite of centralization. So these symptoms would then be moving further away from the source of the pain. Again, the pain and the symptoms, the source being the nerve exiting out of the spine here. Now, when referencing centralization and peripheralization in the context of this program, we need to be very specific about where the symptoms are located and exactly what you are feeling and how intense it is. So I will also be referencing the term most distal symptom. So most distal meaning the furthest away from the source. Again, going back to the source here. So most distal symptom meaning the one we feel the furthest away from that source of the pain. If we can pay attention to that most distal symptom, we can know that the movements we are doing are helping or hurting. So let me just give you a couple quick examples here. Say I've been dealing with some sciatica discomfort that is most commonly into the back of my hip and sometimes goes down into the back of my thigh. So say at this moment, the most distal, again, we are paying attention to the most distal symptom here. The most distal symptom that I am feeling is halfway down my thigh, and that discomfort is a 4.5 out of 10. Now notice I am putting an exact number to that discomfort, and I'm being very specific as to where it's located. That will help me during the assessment portion to know exactly if what I'm doing is going to be beneficial or harmful at that time. So again, it is a 4.5 out of 10, and it is right here in the middle of the back of my thigh. Now, say I am doing the assessment portion and I do one of the movements, and I find that the discomfort is lessened, so it's a 2 out of 10, but it moved further down to the back of my knee, meaning the back of my knee is now the most distal symptom. You would think that since the pain is lessened, that is an improvement. That is actually false. We do not want that most distal symptom to move further away. That would be peripheralization. Again, even though the pain overall is lessened, since that moved further away from the source, that is considered peripheralization, and then that is something we do not want to promote. Again, another example. Let's say I do have that 4.5 out of 10 discomfort right here on the back of the middle of my thigh. I do one of the movements during the assessment portion, and nothing changes at all. And the same exact level of discomfort right here, same position, nothing changed whatsoever. At that point, we're kind of determining that is a neutral stimulus, having really no effect for better or for worse on the condition of that nerve, and we are going to move on to that next movement. Going back to the same example here, I have a 4.5 out of 10 discomfort on the middle of the back of my thigh. I do a movement during the assessment portion, and then I find that the pain moves up, meaning the most distal pain is now right here under my hip crease right underneath my butt cheek, but now it is a 6 out of 10. So there is more discomfort, but it is now closer to the source. Now that is centralization. Again, we are only paying attention to the most distal symptom here. So because it moved closer, because that most distal symptom is closer to the source, even though it is more uncomfortable and there is more pain, that is still improvement, and that still shows that we are taking pressure off of that nerve. This can be a really hard concept to grasp overall because it's not only the intensity of the pain that we want to be monitoring, it is the exact location of the pain. So during the assessment portion, I would suggest having a notebook, a pen and paper to write on to track exactly what you are feeling and where you are feeling it. Because even if there are small fluctuations in the level of discomfort or in the symptoms that you are having, even a 0.25 out of 10 level, say it went from a 4.5 to a 4.25, that is still a change. Again, we also need to be very specific with the location. So say instead of maybe a more drastic move of the symptoms, instead of moving all the way up or down, it maybe moved down like, say, an inch down further my leg. That is still a change in location. Those are things we want to track. Because if you've had this issue for a longer period of time, then there's a good chance that your change in symptoms might be more harder to measure and more difficult to track because the pressure on and off the nerve might not be as easy to track. So again, a quick recap. Peripheralization is the symptoms moving further away from the source. Centralization are the symptoms moving closer to the source. We want to very much so pay attention to the most distal symptom during the assessment, so the symptom that is furthest down your leg, as well as paying attention to the exact intensity of that symptom, even if there are small changes. Reference this video during the assessment portion if you need to, but again, take exact notes on the location and the intensity of your symptoms during the assessment to determine if that movement for you is changing intensities at all or changing locations.